Have you ever imagined being the leader of a people, responsible for guiding them to the promised land, after years of slavery and broken promises? How would the pressure be to lead millions of people in uncharted territory, facing battles, spiritual challenges, and moments of faith tested to the limit? Today, we will travel through one of the greatest accounts of faith and courage of history, Joshua's life, from his death to his own death. But before it starts, let me ask you a question. You are ready to discover the secret that Joshua made, one of the greatest leaders in Israel's history? If the answer is yes, stay here with me. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, not to miss this incredible journey. Now let's delve together into the pages of the Bible and relive the turning points in Joshua's life. After the death of Joshua faced a monumental mission. God calls him to be the new leader of Israel. An immense responsibility. The people were on the banks of the Jordan, ready to cross to the promised land. But Joshua had more challenges ahead than just crossing the river. The people of Israel had crossed the desert for 40 long years, living among unfulfilled promises, immense difficulties, and one constant struggle for survival. During that journey, many were lost in sadness and hopelessness. Cross the desert. It was more than a geographic change. The crossing was marked by a long process of spiritual purification, where many hearts and trust in God has been tested repeatedly. When Joshua took the lead, he wasn't just dealing with a people who needed to cross a river, but with a people who had already witnessed powerful miracles, like the division of the Red Sea, but that even so, still struggled with doubt and fear. Then was to come the transition from the desert to the promised land. It wasn't just a physical change from one place to another, but an internal change where the people needed to leave behind the mentality of slavery and trust fully in God's promises. Joshua knew that the greatest challenge would not be to cross the Jordan or conquer the land, but help the people to overcome spiritual curiosities left by the long walk in the desert. He had the weight of responsibility, not just conquering the land, but to restore the faith of the people who had already lost his sight, what God had really promised. Unbelief and fear still dominated the hearts of many, and Joshua needed it with firmness and courage. Guide those people beyond the difficulties of the past for a future of hope and victory based on God's promises. He faced the resistance of a generation that, although free from slavery, still carried the shadows of their old lives. Joshua then had to lead, not just with military strategy, but with deep sensitivity. Spiritual, he had to constantly remind the people that God's promises were infallible, even in the face of difficulties and the challenges that seemed impossible to overcome. With every step, Joshua sought to strengthen the people's spirit of faith, telling them, "Be strong and brave. You will be with us." The crossing to the promised land did not just represent a new land to inhabit, but a new life, a new mentality, where true faith and trust in God should become the solid foundation of the life of every Israelite. He would need to trust God's promise and lead the people in a way that no one had done before. Quote from Joshua 1, "Be strong and brave. I'm with you like I've been with you. Don't be afraid, for you will lead these people to the land I promised, to your parents." Imagine Joshua's responsibility at this time. He was the intelligence aide, and now suddenly was responsible for leading Israel to the conquest of the land. It wasn't just one question of military conquest. It was one test of faith, obedience and courage. But Joshua had one promise: I will not leave you. And he knew that God was with him at every step of the way of this journey, the spy mission in Jericho. It wasn't just about gathering information, but also about showing that Israel's faith could conquer any obstacle. No matter how big, Joshua sends 2 spies who hide in Rah's house. One woman with one very unlikely story, but with one unshakable faith. Rahab, a woman who lived on the margins of society, was chosen by God to protect the spies, and with that, changed the course of history. Quote from Rahab, Joshua 2:11, I know you gave this land to you. We are terrified, and all the inhabitants of the city are desperate before you. An enemy city woman recognized the greatness of the God of Israel and did an act of courage. She asked for one promise of salvation for her family, and the spies, in response, gave you one guarantee: when the city was destroyed, she and her family would be spared. Like someone so unlikely can be a hero in this story. The answer lies in Rahab's faith and courage. She believed that the God of Israel was more powerful than the gods of the Canaanites, and God, in his curiosity, honored her. Now Joshua and the people of Israel were facing a new ordeal. The Jordan, a river that at the time was overflowing. God commands the priests, carry the Ark of Faith and enter the waters. And when they do, the miracle happens. The river divides and the people cross on dry land. Quote from Joshua 3:13. When the priests who carry the Lord's Ark tread the waters of the Jordan, the waters that come from above will stop. This miracle, it was more than just a show of power. It was a reminder that God was with them. They were crossing from the desert to the promised land, and God was that the way would be possible, regardless of obstacles. But the crossing of the Jordan, it also symbolizes something deeper: the transition of a people who lived in the past for a future that God had prepared. Jericho was the first great obstacle to the people of Israel, and God's strategy to conquer it was amazing. March around the city for 7 days, with priests' blarings. On the 7th day, the walls of Jericho would fall, not by military power, but by the power of obedience to God. Quote from Joshua 6:20. When the people heard the sound of the raised a big scream and the walls fell. It was such a peculiar plain that at first glance looked attractive, but Joshua trusted God and obeyed. And on the 7th day, the walls fell. This wasn't just one miracle. It was one lesson of faith, obedience, and total trust in God. They didn't have to fight with their own strength, but with the power of God, who had already won the victory for them. Joshua continued his journey with victories, but also with challenges. He not only faced physical battles, but also spiritual. In one of the most remarkable moments, the sun stopped in the sky so that Israel could overcome its enemies. Quote from Joshua 10:13. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and didn't rush to put on for almost an entire day. This is one of the miracles, Australia's most extraordinary, and he symbolizes that God was fully committed to Israel's victory. The Battle of Joshua, it wasn't just against visible enemies, but also against spiritual forces. And he knew that only with God's help, he could win before you die. Joshua left a clear legacy, commitment to God with tolerance and obedience. He knew that, regardless of victories, the real victory would come to follow the ways of the Lord. A quote from Joshua 24:15. "Me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Joshua knew that true leadership could not of military force, but of the unshakable faith. What he taught the people of Israel, and what he teaches us to this day, is that the real force is in serving God with all my heart. Joshua was not just a military leader. He was a leader of faith, courage, and obedience. He lived to honor God and followed your direction in every step. Your journey teaches us that no matter how big the obstacles are, God will always be with us, guiding us and protecting us, and you're willing to do your best. To be brave, to trust God in every situation of your life. Just like Joshua, we are also called to trust God and follow His instructions, even when the path seems impossible. If you were inspired by Joshua's journey, leave your like and share this video with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, not to miss more inspiring stories like this. And in the comments, tell me, what part of Joshua's story impacted you the most? Thanks for watching, and see you next video, where we will continue our journey with more stories of faith, courage, and leadership.